wasn't as if we could be legends, etched in the stone, forever on thrones. History's made in the moments. Heroes collide, it's all on the line with our.
All right, we live? Ready? All right. Well, I'm here in a nice local gem of a shop, and these two gentlemen have been really kind to bring me in, and that's High Country Boats. And I can't thank you guys enough. I appreciate it. This is the first podcast I've been doing, and yeah, it means a lot. And well, I'm a little biased. You guys gave me a big hand when I was choosing my boat, and I want to pass that along to everybody tuning in. And you know, honest and trustworthy. Generally, don't go with salesmen, but you guys are an exception to the law, I'd say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we appreciate that.
It's been a real pleasure, and thanks again for having me. So for all those tuning in, thank you. This is the Rebel Against the Indoors, and I'm your host, Jonathan. Jake, Ron, why don't you guys give us a little bit about yourselves?
I'm Ron Boggs. I'm the sales manager here at High Country Boats, and I've been a diehard walleye fisherman my whole life. I've written several books and things like that. I've always been a fish geek.
I'm Jake Monroe, and I'm the general manager at High Country Boats. Been in the boating industry for right around 20 years now.
Holy smokes. That's been a while.
Yeah, a couple days.
I'd ask your age, but that's generally considered rude. Cool. Well, I guess, yeah, we're here to talk to each and every one of you. Boat show season's right here around the corner, coming up rapidly, in fact. The snow and the weather's not cooperating well for it, but, you know, we're doing it indoors, so that way we can get everybody
That's normal
prepared.
in Montana.
Thus is true. Thus is true indeed. So, first and foremost, when guys are looking at boats, there's a lot of different type of boats. I mean,
Oh, boy.
I mean, what types are we looking at? Primarily towards fishing, would you say?
Well, here, that's our primary focus. I mean, we sell some pontoon boats. We sell some really nice family fishing skis, but we're generally known as a fish boat dealer, yeah.
Sure, right. And I guess on a fishing ski to a fishing boat, what's the real difference there?
It's really the focus on who it's directed towards. The fish and ski is towards the whole family, and really the family play is kind of preeminent with the fishing following below that, where the full-on fishing boats, certainly you can pull kids on tubes and things out of a fishing boat, but the fishing is the preeminent thing. So that's
Right.
the biggest difference.
Okay, so you're looking at, say, like a more open floor plan then, between the two, or is that just
Not
packaged?
necessarily, because there are fishing boats with open floor plans, and there are family fishing skis with open floor plans. There's so many variables to the floor plans. It's really just a matter of what the goal of the manufacturer was after with that particular layout.
Gotcha. And so when you're looking at boats, I mean, a deep V is generally the go-to, especially here, right? Or are you looking like a mod V or a pontoon?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
We have the jet boat segment, so
Oh, that's a good point. Yep. I guess with the river, it's good to have a
absolutely.
tunnel or a flat bottom jet. Good to know. All right. So when you're looking at buying a boat, let's say somebody walks into your door, right, and they say, I want a fishing boat. And what's going to be your follow-up question to that?
I'll let you take it.
I'm going to ask them what kind of fishing are they talking about.
Sure.
Because if they're fly anglers, they're looking for a very different boat than somebody that says, I'm a tournament walleye fisherman, or rare here in Montana, or a hardcore bass fisherman. They're going to spend their time going to Fort Peck to fish smallmouth. That's a different game than if they're mostly going to be floating rivers here and casting flies.
Sure. Okay. So then you ask the question. I say, I'm looking for walleyes. I'm going to be staying local here on our reservoirs, Canyon Ferry, Hauser, all them. You know, what are you going to direct them towards from there? What would be a follow-up question potentially?
Size. What size of boat? And
Sure.
budget.
Sure.
Budget's
sure.
going to be can be a big deciding factor in what somebody purchases.
Oh, big time. Yeah, I know when I was working with you guys were pretty fair with that and helped me tremendously. And actually, on that budget note, boats are getting expensive. I mean,
Boy.
What isn't?
Well, that's a good point as well. You're right. I mean, what's really driving that price? I mean, are you looking at the electronics in them now, the materials themselves? I mean, what's driving
Everything
that?
you just said. Cost of goods.
Sure.
Cost of the labor to build it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're buying like your own boat, you bought an aluminum boat, the cost of aluminum has gone up tremendously over the last several years. The resins for fiberglass boats have also gone up quite a bit. It's just, when you have inflation like we've had in our country, that affects pretty much everything. And so the cost of a seat in each boat has gone up, everything.
Sure. Well, that makes good sense. I mean, unfortunately, it's the times we're in, and I guess when it comes to buy, if somebody's on the fence because of prices, it's not looking like it's going down, is it?
No, it'll never go down.
Right. They pretty much hold steady.
Yeah.
So
It's the
note.
price of everything. It's not going to go down.
Sure.
You know.
I mean, look at vehicles. Holy
You're not going
smokes.
to see them drop.
A nice pair of boots. I mean, you could name most anything. My eyeglasses, what I pay for eyeglasses nowadays astounds me. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast.
But we are seeing manufacturers bringing rebates back. So there are some price drops there if you take into account rebates.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to do what they can to help you and then help the end customer as well.
Absolutely.
Well, and some of that is a return to the previous years. Before COVID, manufacturers had incentives to convince people they should buy this particular model because it has some incentives. They're throwing in a piece of equipment or they're giving a rebate, etc. During COVID, the manufacturers couldn't build enough boats, and so they didn't have to give incentives. People were buying them as fast as they could build them. Well, now that COVID's over, we're back to the real world, and so the manufacturers have come to the party again, and they're offering some really good rebates this year.
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
Well, and there's some good warranties now on the outboards I've noticed too, extended warranties and whatnot as well.
Absolutely.
And on that note, break out another 1,000 or BOAT, fact, myth. What do you guys say?
Myth.
Myth.
For me, it's a fact because I go and do it myself. I was telling you the other day, I was trying to launch through some ice, and I kept backing into over an inch of ice with my boat, and I found out that the midsection of my outboard happened to be plastic. It got cracked up, and to fix it's going to be a BOAT, as you say. But that's not the fault of the boat. That's something I chose to be somewhat abusive to my equipment. I use it as a tool, and I had to get out there to fish, and I did what I had to, and oops, cost me.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that. I mean, I haven't done anything quite too bad yet. I took a chunk out of the skeg, but yeah, well, that was user error.
People who are being careful can avoid having those extra costs. We have customers that never spend another dime after they buy their boat. They're very careful about it. But like you say, you happen to be on the water more than most people, so you've got a little nick in your skeg. The real world, the more you use that boat, the more it's going to show that. Same as your truck or your hunting rifle, any piece of equipment, the more you use it, the more it'll show the use.
For sure. And I mean, when you're measuring boats, like let's say you're looking at, let's say new, used. I mean, what scale are you going off of there in terms of how to know, well, the brutality that's been through potentially?
Well, Jake's first thing he's going to do to examine that boat is he's going to plug it into his diagnostics.
Oh, sure.
There's things you can look at. I mean, the first thing is cosmetics. If it's got a bunch of dock rash and dents, well, you know how the maintenance has been done on the boat.
Right.
So that's a dead giveaway. And then purchasing a used boat through an outfit like us, where we run them through the shop, we hook them to the diagnostic computer, we look at engine hours, and we can even see where the engine has spent most of its time running, whether or not it's been idling for hundreds of hours versus running at 5,000-6,000 RPM. You can get a feel for what kind of life the boat has lived leading up to that point.
Sure.
Wear pattern in the carpet is seems like a silly thing, but if you're looking at an older used boat, if it's got a worn trail through the carpet, you can tell it had a lot more hours than another used boat that doesn't show that worn trail, or worn edges where carpet has an edge that it's covering and it's been scuffed by a foot repeatedly. So
sure.
there are very clear cosmetic clues, as Jake mentioned.
Interesting. And so what would be something that would sneak by maybe an untrained eye? Let's say you don't have a diagnostic tool to plug into the outboard. You are not sight unseen, obviously. You're going to go look at a boat, let's say. and unfortunately they chose not to go through you guys, so they're just going private party. What would be a good tip? You know, is it like ransomware? Is it going to be something on the bottom of the boat they should look for? I mean, what little things should somebody take note of?
Cosmetics would be the first thing I would look at.
Okay, so
how the boat
cosmetics.
was treated. You obviously want to look underneath the boat. Don't just look at the sides. Look underneath to see what kind of, if there's any damage or what kind of damage. If it's normal beaching of a boat where it's got some, rub the paint off the center of the keel, no big deal. It's a used boat. It should have that stuff. It's being used. I mean, if you start getting real old and looking, then you might start looking at stuff like transoms. And it's even on a newer boat, it's not a bad idea to, in case there was maybe a large impact to the outboard motor and the lower unit's been replaced. Is there any damage back there?
Sure.
Cosmetics is the big thing I go back to. But I've been doing it a long time too.
Yeah,
so I
right.
can look at a boat and get a real good feel for it before I ever set foot in it or touch it. So.
Sure. Anything to add, Ron?
You know, those are the main things, and Jake stated it quickly, but checking those engine hours, that's something that our shop, on every used boat that comes through here, if it has any kind of a computer in it, we're plugging it in and we're looking at those hours.
Sure.
How many hours and what type of hours, like Jake mentioned,
Yeah,
whether they're high RPM, low RPM, whatever.
Yeah, good to know. All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit here then. So let's say they've worked through it, purchased a boat, right? What would you say it would be generally, and that's a big word, I get, it's a broad word. Generally, what are some meaningful upgrades that somebody should look at doing?
Electronics.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I
I'm an
can
electronics
sympathize.
guy.
Yeah? Oh,
I
I've
like
seen your boat.
technology.
Yep.
Yeah, it depends on what you're buying the boat for, I guess would be the
Right.
the real question there. I mean, are you buying the boat to take the kids out tubing?
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need to do much there.
Sure.
If you want the latest, greatest technology, electronics.
Sure.
Well, and that ties back to what Jonathan mentioned earlier, too, when he was mentioning things that factor into the higher prices of boats nowadays. The electronics expectations nowadays are tremendously higher than they ever used to be. And so, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to sell a tournament type boat, somebody buying a boat for walleye tournaments, to have $20,000 worth of electronics in that boat. That's not uncommon at all.
Well, I mean, that's like 3 head units anymore. I
Right,
mean,
right. When you add in a trolling motor and the batteries to fuel it, if you're using lithium and so forth. So electronics can be a very large part of it, but because we're in a very digital world, if you don't step to the plate, I'm older. I'm from a generation that doesn't, I go kicking and screaming to the technology, where Jake looks at it and goes, how does this work? And let's figure it out. Let's put it together. I look at it and go, oh God, I'm frightened.
oh, sure.
But in the end, I am using a couple of live scopes. I am using, multiples on my own boat. So though I've gone kicking and screaming, I have gone there because the modern technology is stunning.
It really depends on what level of fishing
Yeah.
you're going to do and what level you're going to be content with. We have a lot of customers that they just enjoy getting out. They just go out, throw out some spoons behind their boat and troll around aimlessly. They don't even need a depth finder. They're
Sure.
just out enjoying their time on the water. So
Right.
not much to upgrade if that's your MO.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, I guess alluding to that, for our area in particular, what would you say is going to be the average setup, average size boat? So we're looking at, for those listening, Canyon Ferry is going to be our biggest water, correct? Generally the most winds, followed probably by Holter, I'd say, or argue Holter is the next most popular to Hauser. I mean, what are you guys seeing primarily?
That 18-foot class boat.
18 foot.
Yeah.
Yep.
150 horse outboard motor, 18-foot boat. It suits these reservoirs well.
No good.
And
we
most anglers.
If we could draw you a bell curve, I mean, that the 18-foot boat is the peak of the market here,
Sure.
with the 20 being next and the 16 being below that. We're skewed toward larger boats here in Montana because we have more winds and we tend to have somewhat unprotected waters. That's not entirely true because we have some canyons as well, but in general, our waters get hit with a little more wind than some states do.
Right.
And so people like to have one step bigger boats here in Montana to deal with that.
So alluding to that as well on size, is there any difficulty when it comes to, say, a new boat owner? You know, somebody brand new walks in your shop, inexperienced, doesn't necessarily understand boats that well. They aren't serious. Let's say they just want to get out a few times in the summer. You know, Uncle Jim Bob's coming in, Aunt Susie, what have you. They just want something to get on the water. They don't really have any sort of idea where you guys going to look to send them to.
I personally would inquire their budget at that point in time.
Okay.
Ron's got a good spiel. I may not recite it perfectly. About don't settle. What's your spiel about the Grand come to town once a year, buy the boat that's right for you?
This happens a lot. Grandparents in particular look to spend way more than they need to spend.
Sure.
Because they're thinking, oh, well, I have all these kids in Seattle and grandkids and the kids in Alabama and their grandkids. And when we're all here, we need everybody on the... Wait. And I actually had a couple here that I asked them, I said, now, wait a minute. How often do you see the Alabama family? Mm-hmm. About once every 5 years. And how often do you see the part of your family that's in Seattle? About every 3 years. And I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring your budget down. You don't need to spend for a boat for everyone when that's going to happen one weekend every 5 years.
Sure.
So the idea, and this is not just for grandparents, what people should do is buy the boat that's best for the people that will be in the boat the most often. Sure. So if it's just going to be you and your wife most of the time, you should buy for you first, and ancillary relatives and such that are going to come visit is secondary. Don't plan for all those people and buy a huge pontoon boat to haul 15 people at a time when realistically that's not the normal day-to-day.
Sure.
And especially if you go too big, then you have this boat that's beyond what you really need for just you and your wife or whoever it happens to be. And so I actually help temper people sometimes.
Yeah, and that's rare. I mean, there's a reason I throw honest at you guys. I mean, it fits well.
Well, the customer's going to be happier in the end.
That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's something to be said. If you have a happy customer, they're going to keep coming back for maintenance, upgrades.
Absolutely.
I mean, all the other things that come with boat ownership.
It's a trust thing, really. And like Jake is mentioning, he's going to ask them questions about their budget and how many people and which lake, as you brought up. This comes down to trusting that we are going to help you make good decisions. And I've told a lot of people, anybody can hang out a shingle and sell you stuff, whether that be boats, electronics, life jackets, anybody can hang out a shingle. That's not what we do here.
Sure.
We are trying to be your consultant in the marine industry to help you make good decisions for how to put your boat together, what boat to pick, why to pick it, what kinds of things to put on it. I mean, I'll tell you the number one accessory that goes on damn near every fishing boat, rod holders.
Yeah.
Almost everybody. And so we're sitting here talking about all this high-end tech stuff. In reality, the accessories that go on most boats are inexpensive rod holders and some method of towing a tube,
Sure.
and the tube itself. And so in reality, most of people are not spending the big deep dollars like a tournament fisherman might. And so just for people to keep in perspective that it isn't all about how wild can you go with your accessories. For the most part, it's getting what you need for your family.
Right. And I mean, if you're going to buy that space, take your chunk of lake, if you will, you want to utilize it. I mean, to the best of, well, like you said, if it's primarily you and one significant other, well, tailor it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your space. Awesome. Well, let's kind of wrap it up here. Let's end it on maybe one or two points you really want to send people in when they're going to these boat shows. What should they keep in their mind and remind themselves they see beautiful boats everywhere? I mean, not to be biased, but I am. Let's say a Ranger, Crestliner makes good boat. Lund, I mean, it's hard to go wrong these days, I'd say, especially at new boats. But one or 2 points you want to send them with when they're looking at these boats.
Buy the boat that's right for you.
Yep.
Would be the number one thing.
For sure.
Yeah. Avoid the pressures. What happens now is, especially in the social media world, our neighbors all think that social media is happening at the edge of our driveways too. And so all of your friends, neighbors, and colleagues at work will have opinions of what you should do. And you probably look up to some of those opinions and respect that. But don't let their opinions overshadow what you need, like Jake is saying. This is about what you're deciding for your family. And that other input you get from good opinion leaders and friends out there, take all of that in, but don't let that steer you. Do what you're going to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, they always say, you know, what's better than owning your own boat is a friend with a boat.
I disagree
I
strongly
severely
with
disagree,
that.
but that's what's said. I mean, if you're looking at a boat, it is meaningful and it helps tremendously. And certainly enjoy the summer around here. So
Not just summer. I fished 8 times in December, including New Year's Eve in my boat.
I mean, I was fishing blizzards back in March, and
Yes, you were.
it was when it can happen. It's usually spectacular. So awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, guys. We're gonna actually call this part 1 of 2. I'm gonna go ahead and post this for everybody listening. I want to circle back with you guys a little later when springs and actually look at a few boats. You know, hopefully people have bought their boat. Hopefully talk to you guys about buying the boat, and just give them a rundown and actually maybe look into a couple more upgrades. So for all listening, this is High Country Boats. You guys have been phenomenal. Great customer service. Great, honest, true guys that you can talk to. I mean, you guys do a tremendous job. So Jake, if you wouldn't mind giving a little info on how they can reach you guys and
you can contact us several ways. Obviously, our phone number is 406-996-1225. You can check us out online at HCB for High Country Boats, hcboating.com. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, our name was already claimed,
Yep.
so we couldn't get our own name. There is a small drift boat company in the southeast that claimed the website name. So we are hcboating.com.
hcboating.com. Awesome. Well, everybody listen, give these guys a shout. Hopefully you guys find the boat you're after. Come talk to these guys. And I want to thank you guys again. It's tremendous, you know, with me trying to get this going, having your help, especially the professionals in the industry, makes a big, big difference. And it shows when you guys are talking. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you later and more to come.
We got the top down, cruising at 65.